I'm in the Georgian-style Ebenezer Hopkins house, part of which was built whilst this country was still a colony of my homeland in the good old days. And the man who enjoys working in this historic building along the banks of the Cooper River in southern New Jersey, just a handful of miles from Philly, is Jake Buganski, the executive director of South Jersey Tourism Corporation, also known as VisitSouthJersey.com. Jake joined the company in 2003 as Director of Communications and Technology before being promoted to Executive Director in 2009. Since then, he's helped launch a future campaign for the area with a keen focus on South Jersey's blossoming wine region. Yes, this is a feature about wine. Jake visits the wineries. He's probably not going to admit to this, but I know it's a fact. He visits the wineries on his Harley, right?
Yes.
Because he is a very cool dude. And at the end of our chat, he is going to sing to us A Whole New World from Aladdin. Is that correct?
I wasn't aware of that, but I'll certainly give it a shot.
But you have sung it.
You've done some research, I see.
Well, when I say you've sung it, I use the word sung loosely.
Oh, come on now. It was a beautiful rendition.
Was that your mum that made that comment about you embarrassing her, or a relative of some kind?
I'm sure I embarrassed many of my relatives, yeah.
You didn't know this was all about you today, did you? You thought we were going to be a serious conversation about the wineries.
That's exactly what I thought.
So I start with a very serious question. Stop looking at my notes. That's not allowed. Just to prove I do research, I have to ask you this, and it's a boost for what you do here. I want to know if veal carpaccio at Tavro 13 in Swedesboro is still one of your favorite dishes.
I haven't had it recently, but it's definitely still up there as one of the best dishes I've had in South Jersey, yes.
Okay, so now I've proven my point, but the fact that I've checked you out. I haven't just come in here to randomly ask you questions that I don't know anything about. And the other question is still a personal one, but it's getting us now into this. Is the farm where your dad grew up in Cumberland County, New Jersey, still owned by your family? And if so, did they ever grow grapes there?
It is still owned by my family, actually. My father's brother, my Uncle Tom, runs the farm, and my Aunt Patty runs the farm market, Lillian's Market, which is named after my grandmother, and that's down in Cumberland County. After you get off of Route 55 and before Route 47 and 347 split off, it's right there. My grandfather had grapes planted there at one point, the field where they were since overgrown, but a friend of mine and I, once we started to recognize that we had a little bit of a wine region forming here, figured we'd try our hand at it, and we've got 108 vines in the ground there now, just as a little test. If this
That's what you're growing.
We have 1/3 of it is Chamberson, which is French-American hybrid varietal that does particularly well here, and South Jersey is pretty well known for the Chamberson. Vidal Blanc, which is a white French-American hybrid, and Cabernet Franc.
And the Chamberson, really, for people, a lot of people listening in won't have a clue what that is, but it's pretty much, I would say, kind of an East Coast version of the Gamay grape, in a sense.
Yeah, that's correct, and it grows very well here and all the way down into Virginia and North Carolina. So it's definitely an East Coast grape. I think that comparison's pretty accurate. Yep.
So let's stay on what you're talking about here. Finally, take it off of you, and let's get into what you're doing here. East Coast wines have traditionally been seen as well, in my opinion, and I've been around the wine world for a long time. Back to the Mayflower, in fact. But East Coast wines have traditionally been seen as the poor relatives of this country's left coast wine region. But, with stellar wines now coming out of New York State's Finger Lakes and closer to home from Pennsylvania's brilliant wine producers, it really does make sense that southern New Jersey's time has come to be taken seriously. But is the region really similar in its terroir to Bordeaux? And does it really want to be compared to that pompous, overhyped, egocentric wine region?
I think that the terroir does compare to Bordeaux, and that's something that wineries here have been saying for quite some time, actually. Lou Caracciolo, who is the owner of Amalthea Cellars Winery in Atco, has been one of the winemakers who's been at this the longest. He started his winery in the early 1980s, and he's become very well known as one of the best producers of wine in the area. And he was probably one of the first ones to make that comparison, or to notice the similarities between the two regions, where we have the New Jersey Peninsula extending down with the Atlantic Ocean on the right side and the Delaware Bay and Delaware River on the left. If you flip that over, you have the dynamic that you have in Bordeaux with the Atlantic Ocean on the left, and we're at about the same line of latitude. We have a similar soil type, similar client here. They have a little bit longer growing season than we do, but we make it work. And the Bordeaux blends are actually what the region is becoming well known for. The wineries have begun to understand that that's the type of wine that we can do really well here. Those varietals, the Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot, all grow particularly well here, especially the Cab Franc. And so the wineries are really coming to understand that we can excel with those types of wines. There was a competition a few years back that was staged by the American Association of Wine Economists called the Judgment of Princeton. And it was actually facilitated by George Tabor, who you may know was the reporter present at the Judgment of Paris, where the California wines and American wines really burst onto the scene. So this competition was a blind competition built to replicate that, and it pitted South Jersey wines up against some of the best French wines out there. And while South Jersey wines didn't make the top of the list, there were some that performed very well. In second place in the red category was Heritage Vineyards BDX. It was their 2010 vintage of that particular wine, and they were able to parlay the success of that competition into selling that particular vintage for about $80 a bottle. So that ended up becoming probably the most expensive bottle of South Jersey wine that you could get your hands on to date. But it was just an example of how well South Jersey can do Bordeaux-style blends. And even though it didn't come in first, the margin between first and second was negligible. For all intents and purposes, that wine and several others were almost indistinguishable from the French wines. There were also a few white varieties that did very well in that competition. So that was really where South Jersey wines made their mark, and where we really started to be taken seriously as a legitimate wine producing region. And it was because the wineries have begun to understand that making the Bordeaux style wines is what we do well here. When I started with Visit South Jersey, we had 5 or 6 wineries in the area. And that had grown to about 10 or 12, I believe, by 2006. When this was acknowledged as a legitimate place to grow wine grapes, we really started to see a lot more wineries come on board. And to get to 30 wineries is pretty substantial.
The grapes grown on the East Coast were originally pretty much focused on the indigenous grapes to the area, and they weren't really appealing to everyone's palates. The Chambourcin, yeah, that one works, that's nicely, but not everyone's partial to Niagara or some of these other grape varieties. But we are seeing the vinifera grapes, which are the varieties such as Cabernet and Chardonnay.
Yeah, those are recognizable to people, and it's not to discount the hundreds of years old heritage that we have here for producing those sweeter wines, because we do that category really well. There have been wineries here for a very long time. Renault Winery is, I believe, the oldest winery in the country, maybe, that's still running and producing wines. If not, it's up there somewhere. But we've been doing those sweet wines from the sweeter wines and fruit wines from the indigenous varieties for quite some time, and we do it as good or better than anybody else. So there is definitely a place for that category. There's definitely fans of that category, and we see them all the time. But for the other category of wine drinkers, we definitely are trying to establish that we can grow those here too. However, The way that I see this region evolving and the advantage that I think that we have over some of the other wine regions that do the varietals specifically like they do in California for the most part is that we do the blends so well here. And the winemakers and the wineries really understand that old world style of winemaking. You know, a Bordeaux is a blend of some of those 5 Bordeaux grapes, and it depends where it's grown, what vineyard it's from, what ratio of those 5 goes into it. And you don't know what grapes are in a Bordeaux wine when you drink a bottle of Bordeaux, unless you do some really extensive research, I would imagine, because they're not labeled as such. So anybody who's familiar or a fan of the Bordeaux wines, of the some of the wines produced in Italy or some of the other regions of the world, they're going to be more familiar with what we do well here, and they're going to be more comfortable with those blends, because that's traditionally throughout time, in the old world in particular, how the wines were produced.
Let's get down to the calendar of events for all of the listeners who are planning a visit to the Philadelphia and South Jersey area. And you can talk to us about this fabulous open house right here at Hopkins House. The floor's all yours again.
Our open house events just started this year, and they're happening every Saturday throughout July and August. They're giving visitors an opportunity to, first and foremost, experience this piece of South Jersey history that we're lucky enough to inhabit. And we're also going back to having gallery space on the first floor here, which was done for years when this building was occupied by the Camden County Cultural and Heritage Commission. So the idea was to bring that back, but also combine it with what we now have available from the local wineries, and have wines from our inventory of member wines that we keep here for use at events available for tastings and purchased by the bottle for people who are walking around this beautiful park here. We get a lot of foot traffic here on the weekends, so we figured we might as well open up the door and show off some local wines, some local art, and let people have a nice time here. So that'll be happening every Saturday throughout the summer from noon to 5. So anybody who happens to be in the Philadelphia area or anywhere in South Jersey should stop by for those. And then every third Friday in July and August, the Two Bridges Wine Trail is having wine garden events. We did one last fall, and it was very well received, and everybody had a really great time here in the Hopkins House and in the area out back that leads down to the Cooper River. So it's really a beautiful scene, and we're expanding on what we did last fall by incorporating some local culinary experts into the mix. We're going to have some great local food, a little bit nicer ambiance than we had last time. We've had some renovations done to the building to prepare for these events, so it should be a very beautiful scene here, with local wines, local foods, local music. July's theme is a garden theme, and we're going to be utilizing artists from Symphony in C, which is the symphony orchestra that is headquartered in Camden here. So we're going to have a small group of artists from that symphony playing for the July event. And then August event will be a jazz-themed event, more laid-back, casual end to the summer. But those should all be very, very beautiful events with high-end food, some of the best wines that we have available in the area. And again, just an opportunity for our guests to experience some of the history of the area here in this 300-year-old home.
Let me just tell everybody that Jake Buganski is the Executive Director of South Jersey Tourism Corporation, and to find out everything you need to know, it's visit southjersey.com. Of course, if you go to our website's show page, you will see a photograph of yours truly with Jake, and underneath our photograph you will see a direct link. Is there a piece of music that's been had an importance to you in your life, or just something you like working out to, or listening to in the car, or something that's happens to be your favorite at the moment?
I'm very into EDM, electronic dance music. I'm trying to relive some kind of youth that I think I missed out on, apparently. I think that my favorite is probably Don't You Worry Child by Swedish House Mafia.
Jake, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to sampling some of the wines this summer.
Yep, thanks a lot for visiting us, and we'll send you home with a couple to get you started.
That's the only reason I came here. He doesn't even know that. Some music, and then we'll be back. Oh, you know the music. He's just picked it for you. It's going to be fabulous.